Good morning. Welcome to another session on environmental impact assessment. So, continuing with our introduction, we have seen till now uh, the various phases of the EIA process in brief, and then after that, we have seen about screening in the last session. Right. So, coming to the course outcomes, describing the objectives, capability, and limitations of EIA. Learning outcomes for this particular session, significance of scoping in the EIA process, baseline studies, mitigation plan, and importance of public hearing. Specific outcomes, definition of scoping, its importance, definition of baseline studies, its importance, explanation of the mitigation plan, explanation of the role of public hearing in EIA. So this is the uh, this is these are the different phases which we already seen, right? So now we are going to see about scoping. So what is scoping? I already explained what scoping is in a brief way in the previous lectures. So this stage identifies key issues and impact that should be further investigated. This stage also defines the boundary and the time limit of the study. So if you remember, I explained about the uh, boundary part of what scoping is all about, right? So it is done by consultant in consultation with the project proponent and guidance by the agency, right? So one thing which I have not mentioned in all the earlier lectures is that we need an environmental consultant to conduct this EIA. It's not possible for a common man to carry out the uh, this process of EIA. So we need some specialized people who are well versed with environmental engineering, and it's not only the environmental consultant. We may require a team of members to carry out the process, especially the initial investigation stage and inspection and so on. We'll come to that in the later videos. Quantifiable impacts are to be assessed on the basis of magnitude, prevalence frequency, duration, and non-quantifiable impacts, right? So we are going to quantify the impacts based on the magnitude of the impacts, right? Magnitude of the impact meaning magnitude meaning the what is the severity of the impact. So that's what magnitude means. So the prevalence frequency, so how often that impact can occur, right? Whether it is going to occur in every few days, or it is going to occur every few months, or every few weeks, so on, right? The duration of the impact, whether the impact is going to happen only for a short duration or it is going to be for a longer duration, and something called the non-quantifiable impacts. That is, we are not going to, some of the aspects cannot be quantified, right? For example, an aesthetic feature of something. Aesthetic actually means, something which reflects the beauty of that particular item, right? So we may not be able to quantify that in terms of any mathematical parameters. So whether those things are going to get affected or not has to be seen. A simple example here would be, consider building, right? Essential building that is being constructed near an industry, right? An industry which is emitting a lot of maybe smoke, right? And you have a high-rise building, an industrial, a residential apartment. It may be about 10 floors or so, and you got an industry, right, which is just 3 meters high, and it's emitting a lot of smoke from the chimneys every day for many hours. So what really happens is, after a few days, initially you may not see anything on the building, that is the apartment. Maybe after a few days or so, you will see some spotting and color changes in the external surface of the building. Why? Because the smoke keeps striking the apartment every now and then. And then what happens? Maybe after a few years or so, maybe after 2 years or 3 years, or maybe you know something like that, 3 4 years, you will see that the surface of the apartment becomes blackish in color. So it has lost its aesthetic feature. You can give many examples like that. For example, you know, a similar example would be a high-rise building, um, but it is made out of glass, meaning the front part of the building is made out of glass, and you have a lot of sunlight always coming into the building, So what happens is that this thing will heat up the building, and people inside will not be able to stay without air conditioners. And sometimes, uh, when there is lack of electricity and so on, it is impossible for them to stay even for a few hours in this building. So those aspects have to be seen. Those aspects also have to be seen when we are looking at the impacts. So it is not only the impacts in terms of health, right? We have to see the impacts in terms of aesthetics also. Sometimes the recreational value, right? Recreational value meaning recreational value is something like when you can spend your time in leisure, right? So you may have some components like that in a building. For example, a swimming pool may be there, or you may have some lawns and gardens for children to play, etc. So those things may also get impacted uh, due to some industries or some particular project that is being executed. So the same thing which I told just now, the high-rise building, that is apartment. So the same setup. You have an industry nearby, a lot of smoke coming in, and you have got a lawn where people can spend their time in the evenings, in leisure time, and children are playing and so on. So when there is a lot of smoke that is going to get emitted from the industry nearby, what happens is that mm, the children will surely get affected, right? Because the smoke tends to uh, uh, smoke tends to roam around that particular area, especially after a few days or a few months after the establishment of the industry. You will see that the quality of the air goes down drastically, right? So this may affect the recreational aspect of the building. People may not be able to spend so much time outside because they'll have to inhale all the smoke with so many pollutants like carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, and so on. So that really creates a problem, right? So it was actually a recreational value that is getting affected. Finally it ends up in affecting the health of the people who are staying in the apartment, right? So significance is usually determined through the socio-economic criteria, right? So as I said, significances, you will have to see the social aspects of people staying in, and you'll have to see the economic aspects, right? And for example, here I told that the building gets affected in terms of its features, meaning the external surface gets coated with dust and smoke and so on. So you'll have to do something to bring it back to its original condition, and it may be it means like you'll have to spend a lot of money again to paint up the whole thing, or maybe scrap up all those smoky surfaces, and then you'll have to paint it and so on, right? So those economic components will also come in, right? So after the areas where the project could have significant impact are identified, the baseline status of these should be monitored, and the likely changes in these on account of construction and operation of the proposed project should be predicted. So once this is done, you go to the baseline study. Baseline study, as I said in the beginning, when I talked about the brief description of all the different phases, baseline studies, you get the basic data about various parameters, right? So they should be monitored, and the likely changes on these parameters should be seen due to the construction of this project. So what is baseline data? Right? Impact prediction is a way of mapping the environmental consequences of the significant aspects of the project and its alternatives, right? So environmental impact can never be predicted with absolute certainty. It's not possible. And this is all the more reason to consider all possible factors, because we may not know some particular factors may get affected or not, right? So we may have to consider all the factors into account and take all possible precautions for reducing the degree of uncertainty. So the following impacts of the projects could be assessed, right? Um, as I said, we'll have to look at the basic parameters like air, noise, water, soil, etc. So when you take, for example, air, what we'll have to see is the changes in the ambient level and ground level concentration due to the emissions from the point sources, line sources, and area sources. So briefly, I'll tell what this point, line, and area sources. Point sources, like when you have an industry with a chimney, and chimney is emitting a lot of smoke, that is a point source. When you have line source, an automobile which is going, for example, a bus that is traveling from Pollachi to Coimbatore, and it is emitting a lot of smoke on the way as it goes, and people going nearby the bus inhale all those things. So that is a line source. And area sources, open dumping, where it's not open dumping, it's open burning of waste materials that are dumped in the open yard, and it's an area that is getting polluted, meaning it's an area source. So the effect of all these things on the soil, material, vegetation, human health, all these things have to be seen, right? And when you take an example of noise, the changes in the ambient level due to the noise that is generated from particular equipment or movement of vehicles, effect of these things on the fauna and human health, right? So coming to baseline data, again, when it comes to water, we'll have to see the availability of water to users, changes in its quality, sediment transport, the incoming of saline water, that is seawater coming into the drinking water. When it comes to land, see the changes in the land use, drainage pattern, changes in the land quality, including the effect of waste disposal, changes in the river bank, shore that is getting affected, and their stability. Right. When it comes to biological, you see the deforestation and shrinkage of the habitat of the animals, impact of flora and fauna due to contaminants, impact on the flora and fauna, sorry, due to the contaminants. So flora means actually the plants, fauna means the animals. Impact on rare and endangered species, endemic species means species in a particular area. They are not seen all around the country. Migratory path of animals gets affected. For example, the birds. The impact on the breeding and nesting process, right? Coming to socioeconomic, impact on the local community, including the demographic changes, that is, the population changes, impact on the economic status of people, impact on the human health, and I talked about the human health in the last few slides, impact on the increased traffic. So this is, you have to see all these things, right? Data has to be collected for this particular parameters: water, land, soil, socioeconomic aspects, biological aspects. So this is the baseline study. So coming to the end of this session. So we have a quiz question. Scoping indicates the following components of a project: A, time; B, boundary; C, both A and B; D, none of the above. Thank you. Thus, we come to the end of this session. Thank you for your participation. Looking forward to meeting you in the next session.